to today's politics panel. Joining me are two men who have just won seats in the federal election, but are yet to be officially sworn in as MPs. Angus Taylor, the Liberal member for the seat of Hume in New South Wales, who's here in Canberra, and Labor's Tim Watts, the new member for Gellibrand in Melbourne. Congratulations and welcome to you both.
Thank you, Lyndal.
It's good to be here, Lyndal.
I'll ask you both. First you, Tim, why did you decide on a life in politics?
Look, I've always believed strongly in Labor's mission and expanding equality of opportunity, both economic and social. And from a young age, I believe that the best way to make a contribution to that mission is through the political process. So I put my hand up because I think I can make a contribution.
And Angus?
Well, it was a big call for me. I'd had a full and rewarding career in agriculture and business, but I wanted to make a difference in a different way. I was always surrounded by politics around our kitchen table as I was growing up. My father was president of the New South Wales Farmers, and this at a time when agriculture was really leading the agenda. So I've always been interested. The opportunity came up a couple of years ago and I jumped at it, believing that more people need to come into politics mid-career when they've done a significant amount of time doing other things.
Now, Tim, what's been your background? What's been your involvement in politics up until now?
Well, look, I've spent the majority of my career before now in the private sector. I started my career as a corporate lawyer, specialising in the telecommunications sector. Spent a brief period working with Senator Conroy in both opposition and government on the NBN. But for the last 4 years I've been working at Telstra as a regulatory affairs manager. So my background is predominantly private sector. And
as Angus said, do you think coming in after having experience both in the private sector and in politics helps?
I think it does. I say to people in the Labor Party that you wouldn't want an entire Labor Party caucus room with a background like mine, but I think that I can add a different perspective perhaps than some of my colleagues and yeah, make a different kind of contribution in the caucus room.
And Angus, what do you think that coming in mid-career adds to some MPs who come in at a much younger age?
Well, I think the biggest thing is diversity for the Parliament. I mean, the truth is that more and more people in recent years have been coming through the traditional political career paths of being a union official or a staffer. And we need diversity in Parliament, a Parliament that's more reflective of the broader population. So I think that's the great advantage of having people come in mid-career with other experiences, with other points of view.
Tim, and again to both of you, but first to you, Tim, you've both just been through an election campaign. How did you find that experience?
Oh, look, it was a fantastic experience, Lyndal. You know, it is very humbling when you submit yourself to the electors. Democracy is based on just a series of conversations with individuals, and when you turn up on someone's doorstep and ask them for their vote, you know, it's a very earnest moment. So, yeah, look, I found it a really rewarding experience. It restored a lot of my faith in democracy. You know, it's easy to be cynical about Australian democracy, but you know, the fact that people feel comfortable enough to you know, give you a mouthful at a train station, on a doorstop in a shopping centre, you know, that's something to celebrate. You know, I have a little thrill inside every time that happens.
And Angus, how did you find the experience?
Like Tim, I've always thought democracy was exciting. It's far more exciting when you're really part of it and you're asking people for their vote, as Tim said. But, you know, it's humbling too. There's a great responsibility, I feel, having made commitments to people in Hume and them offering their vote to me. I know I take a great responsibility, and so there's a sense of that too, which I'd heard politicians talk about in the past, but it's only when you're there on the hustings, making commitments, talking to people about their lives and how you might be able to help them, that it becomes real.
And you both replaced long-term MPs. Tim, was that experience of having to build your own name recognition, your own case for election, an interesting one?
It's certainly a big ask, stepping out of the shadow of someone that's made a contribution of the size of Nicola Roxon. She's left big shoes to fill. You know, maybe a different shaped shoe than mine, but you know, they're certainly very large shoes. But you know, Nicola has been a great source of advice and counsel to me. I mean, she went through a similar experience stepping into Ralph Willis's shoes in the seat. So there's been a bit of a legacy in Gellibrand of you know, existing sitting members passing on that accumulated experience of Labor politics in the area. So it's both intimidating, but also it's a great source of experience to be able to draw on.
And Angus, for you?
Well, I followed on from Owie Schultz, who was a phenomenal local member and touched so many people's lives at a local level. And he'd been around for 28 years in the electorate in different roles. And, you know, you do see huge shoes when people come to you and say 14 years ago, you know, Albie saved my life or did something really substantial on the PBS or whatever it was. So it is difficult. It's really challenging to take over from someone like that, but he has been an enormous source of support for me and a role model in many ways for what it is to be a great local member.
Now, what was the thing that happened to you in the election campaign that you didn't expect? Tim?
Although I suppose I didn't expect the Prime Minister to visit my electorate twice, given that it's one of the safer seats in Australia. But I'm very happy that he did. You know, we have 1,400 jobs at the Williamstown shipyards that are under threat, depending on decisions of the Defence Department. So, you know, that's an issue that I'm be keen to take up in the next Parliament, what the Liberal government does about ensuring continuity of work at the Williamstown shipyards.
And Angus?
Look, I didn't expect the campaign to last 18 months. I mean, I was pre-selected almost 18 months ago, and it's been a long haul. It's been a great opportunity for me to get out there and talk to tens of thousands of people around the electorate about what really mattered to them. And I think it is actually a great way to introduce yourself to the electorate to have a time like that. So I didn't expect it, but I've got to say it was very rewarding to have that opportunity.
Now, you will go in as a backbencher in a government. What do you think that experience will be like?
Look, my focus is on Hume in the next little while. I call myself the Minister for Hume, and we have such an extraordinary range of issues that matter in the electorate. That's what I'll be focused on for now. That's what I've been doing for a while, so there's no change in direction, i.e. making the case for the issues that matter in Hume, so I'll continue down that path. And
Tim, you of course go into an opposition, a Labor Party that was defeated at the election. Will part of your task be helping with the rebuilding process, with deciding what policies you keep, what policies you don't keep, how you set the party up for the future?
Absolutely. I mean, there are very serious questions facing the Labor Party at the moment. But the encouraging thing is we've got a process going on at the moment that is involving all of the members of the Labor Party, not just the caucus, branch members from across the country, in setting that future direction for the Labor Party in opposition. So it's both a difficult time, but also a very exciting time for members of the Labor Party.
Do you think perhaps you go in as a backbencher MP, although it's in opposition, with maybe a bigger job than Angus to do, who has a party that has a very, very settled program of work?
Absolutely, but you know, the job in front of us is very clear. It's holding the Abbott government to account for its promises. You know, in my electorate, you know, the Abbott government has made a series of commitments about job creation and job protection. Well, I can tell you there are more than 2,500 jobs at risk at the Toyota Altona plant in my electorate. So, you know, I need to be a strong voice for my electorate and making sure that the future of these constituents' jobs is front of mind in the parliamentary debate about this issue. You
also have to vote on the new Labor leader. Do you have a preferred candidate?
Yes, look, I've made it public that I'll be supporting Bill Shorten. That's not a reflection on Anthony Albanese in any way. I greatly admire him. I think he'll be remembered in history as one of the great characters and contributors to the Labor cause. But I, on balance, support Bill because he has a better record of translating Labor values into action. Ranging back as far as the Longford gas explosion, the Beaconsfield mining disaster, he's been a fantastic advocate for workers' rights. But he's also been a builder. He's built movements and turned them into action. So he took a union that was quite internally divided when he took on over at the AWU and grew that into one of the largest and most united unions in Australia, and did the same thing with the disability sector. You know, came to a sector with a lot of very active community groups and brought those groups together in the Parliament to introduce the National Disability Insurance Scheme. You know, one of the, I think, will be remembered as one of the enduring reforms of the Gillard government. So that's why I'm backing Bill. I think he's got the record of delivering, and I think he can do so in the future.
Now, both of you as new MPs get the opportunity to look at things you might want to specialise on in the future, areas you might want to take up as areas of interest. Angus, do you have any particular areas of interest apart from what helps your electorate?
Well, the things that help my electorate actually happen to be the things that I'm most interested in. So, you know, I'm passionate about agriculture. I think we've got an enormous opportunity now in Australia to get agriculture really firing. We've got a lot of work to do, and that will matter not only in Hume, that will matter across Australia. I care deeply about infrastructure. Tony Abbott has said he's going to be an infrastructure Prime Minister, and I'm excited about that because we need it. Transport infrastructure and telecommunications, of course. And I'm pretty passionate about getting small businesses up and running. You know, the empty shop fronts we've got across Hume are extraordinary, and I think this is true across all of regional Australia. We've got to get onto that. We've got to fix it. So they're the areas I'm focused on, and my job is to translate our national policies down to the local level, and that's what I'll be doing.
Tim, does your background in communications suggest already your areas of interest?
Well, yeah, I've worked in the IT sector for the better part of 10 years, so I clearly have a long-term passion in that area. But coming into Parliament, you know, you do try to broaden yourself and your interests. So my focus areas going into Parliament and the broader policy debate are multiculturalism and education. Gellibrand's an electorate with more than 60% of the constituents who are either born overseas themselves or have parents born overseas. So diversity is one of the great strengths of the electorate. It's also an electorate with some of the more disadvantaged schools in the state, and it's an electorate that benefited disproportionately from Labor's Better Schools policy introduced by the previous government. So, look, multiculturalism and education are the two issues that I'm most keen to champion in Parliament.
Now, I can't let you two get away with that, without addressing one issue of the day. The same-sex marriage issue is back on the agenda after the ACT Assembly introduced legislation to allow the practice in the Territory. That legislation is expected to be voted on next month and is all but guaranteed of passing. The Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, says the Commonwealth will look at the legality of the Act.
Obviously, the ACT is entitled to do what it wants within the law. Within the law. And the attorney will be seeking legal advice on precisely how far the ACT can go on this.
Well, this is a very complex area of the law, and I couldn't say beyond doubt that it's not open to some form of challenge. But we do have very clear advice that our law is capable of concurrent operation with the Commonwealth Marriage Act. The provisions of the Self-Government Act do permit laws of the Territory to be valid to the extent that they are able to operate concurrently.
Now, we're hopping you into the middle of a conversation that is unfolding. Tim, if the Commonwealth does decide that it wants to move against the ACT, what do you think your position will be? And do you see this potentially as an issue about same-sex marriage or an issue about territory rights?
Look, on the substance of same-sex marriage, I support same-sex marriage. I should also point out that both candidates for the Labor leadership, Anthony Albanese and Bill Shorten, also support same-sex marriage. The questions of the constitutionality, you know, we can leave that for the courts. But on the point of what happens if a bill hits Parliament, you know, Labor amended the law in 2011 to ensure that territory rights couldn't just be wiped away at the stroke of a minister's pen. So this will need to go through Parliament. Now, at that point, the Labor caucus will make a decision about whether to extend the conscience vote that we did extend to members on the substance of same-sex marriage to a bill addressing this issue. I think we've got a good record of granting conscience votes to members on these issues, and the challenge for Tony Abbott is whether he gives members like Angus the same freedom on this bill.
Angus, what's your position on this issue? And it is one that Mr Abbott has said there was not a conscience vote in the last term, but any issue would be a matter for the party room after the election.
Yeah, sure. Look, I've been pretty clear that I'm not going to be a crusader on this issue. I think whilst there are people in my electorate and across Australia who care deeply about the issue, I'm not going to be a crusader on it. I've also said that I'll voice the values and views of my electorate on this issue, and it is a socially conservative electorate. If it comes down to a party room vote, I will sound my electorate out, but I'm pretty confident at this point that those socially conservative views will hold water, and I will respect them.
Although it may have more resonance in your electorate because it's quite close to the ACT, so your electors would know what was happening. Yeah,
it is, but remember my electorate goes up to Sydney and out west to places like Grenfell and Cowra and Young and Cootamundra, so it's a diverse electorate, and there is a big part of it that's pretty conservative, and I think is not excited about changes in this area.
On that note, Angus Taylor and Tim Watts, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
And that is Capitol Hill for today. We will be back at the same time tomorrow. Until then, good night.